Hi, I'm Rami Jubran, Chief of Staff at Drinks, and this is the Drinks Podcast, the business of online alcohol. Today's guest represents a trend we're seeing across the wine industry, the rise of small, high-quality producers competing against corporate consolidation. Chris Upchurch is a founding partner of DeLille Cellars and runs Upchurch Vineyard with his wife Thea, a restaurateur. Chris has navigated both sides of the wine business, building established brands and launching boutique operations. I'm excited to get into his perspective today, but what makes this conversation particularly relevant is Chris's view on how digital tools and DTC channels give small producers advantages they've never had before, if they're willing to rethink how to reach customers. So we'll be exploring all of that today. I want to start with Chris. You've seen the wine industry from multiple angles, established brands, boutique operations. When you started Upchurch Vineyard, what made you confident a small producer could compete in today's market, and how did you think about digital channels factoring into that?
Well, first of all, I have some advantages in that I've been in the industry for 30 years. DeLille Cellars was a real success, and I do have some reputation there. Also, I am one of the main people at Red Mountain, and Red Mountain has become one of the Grand Cru areas in Washington State and really one of the Grand Cru areas in the world. Because of that, I have the advantage of, since I've been in Red Mountain for 30 years, I get the kind of the rows that I want and all that stuff. And then also, like I said, getting some notoriety that other people that are just joining the business now wouldn't have. And then underneath that, I have just this undying faith that wine's been around for thousands of years, and that there have been all sorts of trends and wars and markets and everything else that have, I liken to Germany, storming over the Champagne area for a few years, and but they bounce back, and Champagne seems to be doing okay, So I mean, the bottom line is that I have this overall faith in wine as long as it's quality and as long as you pay attention to all the details and do everything that you need to do. There's no question that people have to work a little harder these days. But I'm not allergic to that either. And I don't sit there and say, I'm a famous winemaker, it'll all sell and all that. I've gone past that now and realized that you just got to do a little bit of everything, including making some of the best wine in the world. Anyway, I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No, for sure. So what made you feel you've got the experience, you've been doing this for a long time, you've built up your credibility. What made you feel like there was a space for another winery? Or what made you want to start a winery? Like start Upchurch?
Well, it's what I do for first of all, and DeLille got to the point where we got bigger and bigger, and I'm very proud of everything that we've done at DeLille, and I continue to be the founding winemaker and also the partner. I'm one of the owners of DeLille, and so I'm very proud of all that. But it got to the point where we got bigger and bigger, and what I really love doing is being a craftsman that crafts small amounts of very high end wine. And although DeLille makes some great wines, we're up to 90,000 cases now, and
Wow.
big crews and all that stuff. And so when this property on Red Mountain came available to me, it's just a 20-acre site, but when it became available to me, I recognized I had all the growers and everybody that I knew look at the property, and they said, this place is special. You should buy it. And I did. And it's just my wife, Taya, was really encouraging me to do this. She said, this is what we should be doing, is having our own little Tusca village, even though it's in Eastern Washington.
Yes.
To us, it's a little Tuscan villa there. And, it's just, again, it's what I do. And it's the basic faith that I knew I made great wine. I knew Red Mountain made consistently great wine. And so, plus, on top of it, I got to do what I wanted to do because Tay and I own all of it. The clones, the orientation, everything, we got to do. We have one of the best growers in the state, Dick Boucher, who we were able to combine with. I think one of the things about the new generation is they really focus on green growing. I think that's a big thing now. And so we wanted to be at least sustainable from the beginning and from the ground up. When we planted and are certified sustainable farming and so forth like that. So we got to do all these things that sometimes a bigger winery can't do or wouldn't choose to do because they're not always spreadsheet favorable decisions. Sometimes
Yes.
they're more quality favorable decisions, which you can do if you're small and you own it all. So anyway, I just had the faith that if I make really great wine, people will buy it. One of the things that I constantly talk about that I think we should is never to forget delicious. That might sound like a cliche or something like that. But really, when you think about it, chefs, winemakers, all that, sometimes we get so esoteric that we kind of forget about delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Like a chef will come up to you and say, "Hey, I got this. It's sea urchin and pink peppercorns and arugula or something like that." And you
Yeah.
go, "Well, that's cool." Or they'll say, "That's interesting." And of course, interesting is like a date. It's a kiss
Oh
of
yeah.
death.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But I've always wanted to make wines that were not only remarkable in their character and all that, but I want them to be delicious too. And I think that that's part of the reason why I've always gotten great scores and great accolades, because I don't forget about delicious either. And I think if I do all those things, the market will come around, people will come around. I don't think kids are going to stop drinking.
No.
It's just my intuition. I've raised a few and all that. I know there's trends out there, but I just think there's plenty of room for some high end wines. And quite frankly, a lot of the market of wineries in California or Washington don't have the background that I have. They may have deep pockets and all that, but they don't craftsmen like I am to make that kind of thing. So we'll
How
see.
do you think about the with all of your experience, how do you think about leveraging DTC and e-commerce to help expand your base and your sales?
Well, what I've learned is you got to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, uh, obviously you want to do as much DTC as possible because the margin's better in DTC.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and there's a number of things. First of all, if you get them in there, you're going to have a one-on-one personal experience with them. We try to be in our tasting rooms as much as we can. Taya, has got her European charm that works wonders, and maybe I don't have that, but I certainly get in there and try and have that one-on-one. And also, like I said, your margins are the best at DTC and all that. But if you're only doing that, a lot of these things are trendy. Everybody, past year or two has said, we're going to do the clubs. We're going to have clubs,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll bring everybody in. They'll join our clubs. And I'm sitting there going, there's diminishing returns to that. You know, Sooner or later, people are going to wait and say, hey, I have 87 clubs I'm a member of. That's not going to work, And indeed, we've seen that, especially with this market, we've seen people, come down on their clubs. So for us, it's more of a, if they join the club, it's going to be a meaningful that they really like us and all that. But you can't rely on that. You can't rely on wholesale. We've seen what's happening with California and wholesale. We've seen, in Vegas and all that. You can't rely on wholesale. You can't, you got you got to do it all. You said, and that's why the three level thing is all about. And now you add the internet on top of that, and AI and all that. I think it's a mistake if you're ignoring that as well. I think you've got to do it all. But when I mean all, I mean don't just say AI is going to get us there. You know, or a DTC. We're going to go all DTC now. I think that's a mistake because then you're not reaching everybody. You're not getting out there. One thing about the internet is you can reach a lot of people. They
Oh
may
yeah.
not be the ones you want, or they may not buy all the time or whatever, but just getting out there, it's kind of like Costco. You sit there and say, do we really want to be at Costco? But at the same time, Costco does reach out to a lot of people. So I think you got to do it all. That's my answer.
How do you think about, as a like smaller winery, how you manage your marketing? Because you're going to have a lot less marketing to spend than a larger like winery that's selling 90,000 cases, right? If you guys are selling under 6,000, even if we just think about it in those terms, like you were doing like a 20th of the marketing budget, if we're putting it nuts to nuts. How do you think about how you best maximize that, knowing there's so many opportunities?
Well, that's a great question. We're dealing with that all the time because obviously we want to do as much marketing as good. And the old adage that when the market's down, that's the last time that you want to get rid of your marketing budget. The tendency is,
Hmm.
well, we're not doing so well. Let's get rid of the marketing. That's the first guy you can fire, but it's also the last guy you should usually. And we believe in that too. So, basically, it's a great question. How we address it is that, again, every day we say, what else can we do? And with the people that we have, I've got great people working for me, and Shay's here, and really, it's just about, you know, rolling up your sleeves and keep going at it. And if that means, spending more time with the internet or anything else, it's just, and it means more work for Tay and I too, which, we're kind of sitting there going, we've been doing this for a while, do I have to show up every day and all that? But with this market, you do.
Hmm.
I could give you specifics on what we're attacking, but that's all that changes too.
Constantly,
Constantly.
constantly.
So if you're not working it, you end up being MySpace or something like that,
Yes.
and that's what we don't want to do either. So we're constantly looking at different avenues. One thing we're doing DTC is we're doing not just events, but we're doing events that other people aren't doing. For
Tell me
example,
more.
well, we had a caviar event just 2 weeks ago that
Hmm.
we had one of the local caviar experts here. Mark is he's Russian from that area, and he is an expert. We had him here, and it was great because it not only was a subject that most tasting groups are not dealing with, but it's also Mark was able to get it to the more there's a caviar for everybody, just like there's a wine for everybody.
Hmm.
There's a caviar for everybody, and not all have to be snobbish beluga up in the air. He was also talking about Turkish starlight caviar and stuff like that. And really, and then we talked about pairings, and then we talked about what you put the caviar on and all that stuff. Whether it's taro chips to scallops to all these other things, and it was really great, really well attended. And we had to close because we filled up our tasting room, and so just things like that. We had a Louita Famille de Fromage, which is the 8 families of cheese, which was a cheese thing that talked about the different categories and what that meant to wine and all that. That was sold out and all that. So that's one thing, some of the things we're doing for DTC, and then of course we use the internet and everything to get out there and get it out to people um, and other things too. So.
What I hear you saying though is it's the experiences, it's showing people wine kind of as a part of other experiences. So whether it's cheese or caviar, when you're doing those types of events, do you find that the demographics of the people coming, are they people who are already buying your wines, who are trying to find more uses for them? Are they people who are new to your wines? Like what type of people are showing up at these types of things?
Well, hopefully all the above. We really believe that you have to be in contact with your consumer. You can't just throw it out there and all that. You have to be in contact with them constantly. Basically, we look at it as a draw. We look at it as a real positive for people to join our club, which we have a club. But we also look at it like, people out there saying, God, look at the things they're doing. Maybe we should be a part of that too. And just getting everybody to be a part of the group. And then, of course, we put it online. We do all the the things like that, and use the influencers, everything that we can do to put it all together. It's just a matter of, it's a cumulative effect. Obviously, you don't just start off one day and then the next day you're packed. You got to get the word out there and get everybody going. And it's also just combining all efforts together. Obviously, all the internet works with DTC, which works with out of state, small markets and big markets. We were in Coeur d'Alene last weekend, and they were excited about it. Just putting it all together.
That's cool. Have you seen a approach or a tactic work really well for you on the online side of things?
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying is that you all have to work on it. Yeah, we have to work on everything. It's blogs like this one. I'm on a lot of blogs, and certainly they reach out to people. And we have them up here in Washington, but we're on blogs around the country. We've been on TV, everything else. And again, I think people will come on this show and give you a formula, right?
Mhm.
And say, well, we do this, we do that, we do that. I'm not a formula guy. I'm really not in winemaking and not in marketing either. It's more of, you got to keep working it. I look at winemaking as a craft. People call me an artist or a scientist or all these things. But really, I don't put wine on the wall and stare at it. Wine's a product that people enjoy. At the high end, there's more artisanship than there is in Gallo, for example.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that we're not a craft. We're a craft, which means that we build and work, wine. And it's the same thing. There's, every year is different, and every year is a challenge, but every year can be glorious. And I think it's the same thing in marketing too. You just got to, I could give you formulas, but they would change tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
More than
When you
anything
think
else, just work everything.
yeah.
And
When
I'm
you
not an
think about
expert on everything either. I've got to have people that help me too.
For sure. No, no, yeah. Everything takes a village. When you think about your experience in wine over the last 30 years plus, what are the trends you've seen like really explode and then kind of dissipate that like really surprised you?
Um, well, I don't know about surprising me. I would say that one of my greatest privileges is to be part of the development of Washington State and to see it rise over the years. When I first started, there was 4 wineries in Woodinville, and now there's over 100.
Wow.
And there's over 1,000 wineries in Washington State. And I always had the faith in it, but to see that rise to being one of the Grand Cru regions of the world, which I believe it is, and that doesn't mean every winery is making Grand Cru wine, but every winery in Bordeaux isn't making Grand Cru wine either. So
Totally.
the bottom line is we're in the same sentence. We're not better than Bordeaux. We're not better than anybody else, but we are now in the same sentence. And that really has been a real privilege as far as the marketing trends are concerned. You know, I don't know how much, again, if you're out there working the problem, I don't know if you get caught by surprise. I think this current market is more surprising than I've ever seen anything because we don't exactly understand it.
Hmm.
Again, I more love the fact that we're out there working it because that's the only solution that I can give you. I think anybody out there that thinks that it fits a formula is going to struggle a little bit. But this, I mean, I've heard everything by, well, everybody's taking Ozempic and that's why they're not drinking wine,
Hmm.
to the younger generations not drinking wine, to health. And then, of course, there's the economy too. We've seen restaurants really struggle.
Hmm.
It's not sales as much as it is costs. Costs have gone through the roof, both for restaurants and for wineries and any other hospitality group. This is why you go to a restaurant and it's $46 for a chicken breast.
Hmm.
it's not the lack of sales, it's the costs that are involved, and labor costs and all that stuff is run. Minimum wage up in Seattle now is $21, $22 an hour. So everything, the cost has gone up, and you have to deal with it all. So this market, combination of cost, combination of what the young generation's doing, everything else, has been, and maybe a overproduction of wine, I might say.
Mm-hmm.
California supposedly has 25 million gallons of bulk wine
Mm-hmm.
that they're not
Juice.
sure what to do with. Yeah. Washington itself has 1 million gallons. We've gone over 1,000 wineries up here, and I'm not sure every one of those wineries has a raison d'etre. Hopefully Upchurch Vineyard does, but I'm not sure every other one does. And I know in California, they're kind of killing themselves in some ways because, $150 tasting rooms that are non refundable if you buy wine. I mean, it's kind of tough on people, and you put all these conditions together, and we have a market that, usually you have a V market. It goes down. Yeah, there's something happening. The market, the overall economy's down, whatever. And, it'll bounce back up. But
Yeah.
we're waiting for that bounce up, and we haven't seen it yet. So.
Well, and I think to your point, like there's a lot more external pressures now than there ever have been, right? Like before when it's been like, oh, the market is down, the market is down.
Right.
But we don't see people drinking less. We don't see the next generation drinking less. We don't have things like Ozempic also playing into this that we don't know how they're impacting them.
Yeah.
But now you've got not only the market being down, but then all those other factors, which make it a much scarier thing. So I think to your point, like as long as you keep doing as much as you can and trying to proliferate and do as many different types of things to try and drive more of those things, I think it's the right approach.
So what it really is it's the individual winery as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, because everybody's looking at this guy, how do I beat this market and the kids and everything else, and but again, if you have the kind of approach, and big wineries can't have this, Fetzer can't have this approach. They make 100 million cases. So I mean they can't have this approach, and that's why they're the sector that's really really struggling. With California distributors going under and everything else. How do they solve that problem? They can throw 100 people at it and it's still going to be tough. But and $100 million at it, it's still going to be tough. But when you're smaller, then you can start looking at it like, okay, how do I just get the word out for me to the right people, to the Upchurch Vineyard, to the right people? And it's a little bit easier for me than it will be for the larger markets. And I think that Silicon Valley and all the economic meetings have really demonstrated that. This is where they're at, and it's not good. So anyway, hopefully, I just, again, I have the faith in the authenticity of wine, being one that is thousands of years old and just the best thing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I think that more people have said, I love you over wine than they have over any other product.
I think that's true.
And you want to take that out? I mean, maybe there's times when we shouldn't say I love you over wine, but
Yes.
I won't get into that, But when you think about it, do you really want to take that part out of our I don't.
No. You said something that I want to ask you a little bit more about. When you started out in wine in Washington, you mentioned there were 4 wineries in your area, and now there's over 1,000 in Washington. It's amazing to think about you getting to see that change in your lifetime, because most people don't see that. Most people don't pioneer things or help lead things, don't get to see the fruit of their labor, right? They plant the seeds, but they don't get to have the fruit from the trees. You kind of get both of those. So what do you think has been your proudest achievement in that time period, just seeing how much of an impact you've had on your state and your state's presence across the world?
Well, it's just that. It's just that the amazing growth of an area that when I first came here, they were still talking about Riesling, being
Mhm.
our big variety. That San Michel made more Riesling than any other winery in the world. And we were trying to figure out, there were, when we came, there was like 2 vineyards in Red Mountain. And now Red Mountain is totally planted.
Mm-hmm.
100%, and probably the most valued property in the state, that and Walla Walla. But I think Red Mountain is going for the highest prices. It's established itself as Bordeaux varietals, Cabernet. But just to see the progress that we've made in everything, like I said, I'm a Francophile in a lot of ways. I've visited every vineyard from Australia to Mendoza to everywhere in Europe and so forth and so on. And I've done it with the idea of, how does Washington get there?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about what bricks you harvest at. I care about what you're thinking and how did you get there, and what does it take, and what can we do in Washington, and what can we not do in Washington, and all that stuff. And then you parlay that to a couple vineyards that we planted, and each one's better than the next. And we get to the point where we see this great growth in Washington State, because the potential's always been there. The potential happened 10,000 years ago with the Missoula floods and how that changed the whole eastern Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So now we know that we're capable of making wines as good as anywhere in the world. How do we get there, and how do we discover our own area? I think that's the greatest thing, is discovery of your own place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of winemakers around the world that would be, they're in places that are 700 years old. And so they're incredible wineries and incredible winemakers, but they don't get that discovery that we get. They're sitting there trying to keep their place in the world and make great wine, and they do. I enjoy them all the time, but they don't get that discovery that I've been able to have. And so it's a privilege to me.
That's amazing. I want to ask you one more question, then I want to hit you with some rapid fires. But you talked about being able to, because you've started this winery, be much more focused on the sustainability, the green, doing all those things from the beginning. Are you seeing those start to resonate with customers? Like, are you seeing the dividends from doing that outside of just the agricultural and earthly impact of doing those things?
Yeah, it's almost being demanded now. We have a lot of people that come in, especially the youth. I have to give it to them, that they want to know more than, what time do you pick the grapes. They want to know that you're kind to the environment, and that you're respecting everything. There's a huge natural movement going on in the Loire Valley now, and there's so many things. They at least want to know that you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes certifying and all that, it's a big pain. Sometimes you wonder why you're doing it, because you're a green grower and you're doing everything, and to go through all the hoops and everything to be certified. But that's there for the consumer. That's there to tell the consumer, look, you don't have to trust us. We're certified because we're doing everything we need to do to make sure that we're a low impact winery and a low impact vineyard. Yeah, they're really looking for it, and I think our sales would be less if we didn't do something like that.
That's great.
And again, there's something that the big wineries, it's very difficult for big wineries to make sure that everything is certified, because they're just making too much wine.
Mm-hmm. All right. This has been delightful. I want to hit you with some rapid fire questions really quickly, and then we'll kind of close up here. But let me ask you the first one. At the end of the day, you had a long day. Are you reaching for a red wine or a white wine?
Just depends on what I feel like. There are, not just from Washington State, but from all around the world, there are great red and white wines from around the world. And I would never, it's like blonde or brunette, right? No,
I
not
guess. I
me.
guess.
Not me. I love both of them. And I would say that I think some of the reasons why people say red or white is because they haven't had great experiences that
With
I've
both.
had with
Yeah.
both. We get a lot of, well, I don't drink white wine at the
Mm-hmm.
wine. And the basic reason is because they don't like mediocre California Chardonnay, and they haven't had the really great ones. And there's an ocean full of the mediocre ones. And I said, but try our Southwest Facing, which is a European style Sauv Blanc, and they love it. They said, well, this one's good. And I said, yeah, it is, but just reach out a little bit more, and um, or reach out to some of the really good California Chardonnays, and not just the boatload of everyday wine. And the reverse can be true too if you're just drinking, inexpensive wines, Italian inexpensive wines or something like that, and say, well, I only drink white wine. Wait a minute now, there's some great red wines around the world too.
Has there been a region lately that's really surprised you in terms of wine?
Always.
Has there been one that you can think of lately that you were like, "Oh yeah, that region, I've been really impressed with what's coming out of there right now?"
Well, Loire Valley is, although it's not surprising that
Mhm.
Loire Valley is great, but it is. I think a lot of the natural wines that are coming out of there, and some of the, um, uh, people are moving there from Bordeaux and stuff like that because of a lot of the new regions. Also, one of the things that I know is that there's some incredible Austrian wines, but not from the Wachau. I mean, I've drank Gruners a long time ago, but from the southern Austria, there's an area called Styria, which makes some of the best Sauvignon Blanc in the world. People don't know this, but I do.
Mhm.
I've been there and I've tasted a lot of small producers that are making incredible Sauvignon Blancs that the Europeans take most of it. I've seen it in New York and online some, but for the most part, I guess Tamont is the number one producer there. And I just think that they're remarkable Sauvignon Blancs, and a lot of things I've done in my cellar have been because I've seen some things done there that really enhance their grapes. So anyway,
That's cool. Has there been a wine trend that died in the last 5 years that you are so thankful is gone that we don't have to deal with anymore?
well, the canned wine.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's going to is sustainable, and it's not. I mean, it's like I remember when $2 Chuck came on, and
Uh-huh.
everybody said, "Hey, this is amazing, $2 Chuck and all that," and I said, "Wait a minute, it's just a jug wine.
Yep.
We've made jug wines all throughout millennium. Now they
Uh-huh.
got a nice name on it, $2 Chuck. That's great, and so they're marketing it as $2 Chuck. That's great, but it's still just jug wine, and so the canned wines, everything else, they're doing everything they can, but there'll always be a place for at least a certain amount of inexpensive wine, just like anything else. Skis, art, doesn't matter. There's always a place for stuff that's inexpensive, and it's the same thing with wine. Yeah.
Let me ask you this last one. What's the most interesting food and wine pairing that you found lately that like really surprised you?
I get surprised all the time. I talk about in Kyoto, I had aged Burgundy, red Burgundy, and sashimi that just blew me away. And I discovered this because of a gentleman in Okinawa that told me about this combination and everything. And I said,
Mhm.
well, wait a minute, sashimi, don't you drink, crisp white wines, or maybe even sake, or,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And white wine is like a sake in a lot of ways. And he said, well, it has to be a softer wine, like an aged
Mhm.
Burgundy.
Mhm.
But if you do it right, none of the wasabi or any of that stuff.
Yeah, just pure.
And then, and that blew me away. That was a epiphany of mine.
Yeah.
The rosé and caviar. I've had a lot of fun with that.
Uh-huh.
As long as because rosé loses the tannins, and our rosé is styled after a Tavel. It's a 100% Grenache rosé. It's killer. So putting that on top of we had one with a brown butter kind of focaccia bread with caviar on it, and that was fantastic. And I'm a lucky guy. I really am.
Yes. Yes, you are.
I've actually been to 35 three-star Michelin restaurants from
Wow.
Lima to everywhere in the world, and so I get to do some of this. But my whole thing is that it's okay for me to be as spoiled as I am, as long as I get to pass this on to other people. And so that's what I'm.
Exactly. I love it. Chris, I really appreciate the conversation. I loved where we went. It was great hearing your experience in wine and how that's kind of evolved over time. Um, this has been the business of online alcohol. If you found this conversation useful, subscribe, share with anybody you think would find it interesting. Chris, how do we find you and your wines?
Well, you can also, you can always do online contact at upchurchvineyard.com. And you can come visit us in Woodinville if you're in the area. We certainly have a new tasting room in Woodinville, right near the Purple Restaurant. That's people of Woodinville know. Just any way, you reach out, we'll come get you. It's Instagram, all that other stuff too. But
Perfect.
basically, contact at upchurchvineyard.com or on the website, which is upchurchvineyard.com, right?
You can find them on LinkedIn and all
Yeah,
the
the
socials,
website. Just come
Instagram.
see us on the website. All of our wines and our scores and everything. People will be impressed. We just got our first 100-point score.
Congratulations.
So things are working. We're
Yeah.
happy. We're dancing naked in the streets over some of our wines. So
And maybe we will be after we have some of those wines.
okay, great.
Chris, this has been a delight. I've been Rami. Thank you for listening to The Business of Online Alcohol.
Thanks for having.